Smart people have few kids. That's a fact, and it's worrying because we might be selecting against our own intelligence. Having less babies is known as the intelligence fertility paradox. People with higher education and higher intelligence tend to have fewer children than those with lower intelligence and less education. And that happens consistently across all developed nations. The most extreme example is South Korea, where the average woman has just 0.78 children. That's the lowest fertility rate ever recorded in human history. It's so low that their total fertility rate doesn't even line up with the country's alphabet. They have one child for every 1.23 Korean character. That's like saying you have half a baby for every baby. This pattern isn't true for all countries. Developing regions still have lots of babies, but as access to contraception and education increases, families get smaller. That's because having lots of kids takes a lot of time, money, and effort, and those resources can be devoted to other things. The whole thing looks like a law of nature, but remember, nature doesn't care about laws. Nature is just what happens. The relationship between intelligence and fertility isn't a biological law. It's driven by social, economic, and psychological forces. Now, before we dive into the possible causes, let me tell you a story about Charles Darwin. He was worried that civilization would disconnect reproduction from desirable traits. Back in his day, that meant intelligence and ambition. He saw this as an evolutionary disaster, so he wrote down his concerns in his notebook. The more civilized a woman is, the less chance she has of having children at all. Today, we don't need to worry about reproduction in general. Humanity's population is growing faster than ever. What Darwin was concerned about was the ability of smart people to have enough children to carry on their traits. And now that looks like a legitimate problem. When smart people don't have kids, that can limit the spread of advantageous genes. It's like throwing away half your deck before a poker game. You might still win sometimes, but over the long run, you're gonna lose. And losing isn't an option for our species. So why do intelligent people have fewer children? There are several theories. One is that people with high IQs take longer to finish school. After all, they can master each subject faster and then move on to the next. But that means they're older when they start working and making money. And when you're older, when you have kids, your fertility goes way down. In addition, smart people tend to live in cities where you can go a long time without owning a car. When you're spending all your free time searching for parking, you probably don't want to come home and search for a babysitter. And since women are still doing most of the child rearing, that reduces their attractiveness as partners. But that's just a hypothesis. Here are two actual studies on the subject. One found that parents with higher IQs spent more time thinking about the quality of their kids' schools. This makes sense if you've ever tried to choose a preschool for your kid. You know there are a million things to consider. But when you add it all up, it turns out that smarter parents are less satisfied with the schools in their area. Another study took a different approach. They looked at 10 million records from Swedish tax agencies. They wanted to know how much kids affect the income of their parents. And what they found was that having one child reduced income by 25%. Having two kids drops income by 50%. It's a similar story for both men and women, and it gets worse the longer they stay at home. For a woman who stays home for 5 years, each child reduces her income by 40%. A man who stays home for 5 years loses 60% of his income per child. And if you think those numbers are bad, they get worse with age. For a woman aged 35 to train Webber, the price of a child doubles. That's a lot of money to spend on diapers and formula, so it's no wonder why smart people have fewer kids. But here's something that's really interesting. If you look at the oldest members of society, the pattern reverses. The rich and educated are more likely to have kids than their poorer neighbors. Now, that seems counterintuitive. After all, they're even wealthier by then. So why have more kids? Well, it's simple. Their kids are grown up and gone, so it's not costing them anything. It's also worth pointing out that correlation isn't causation. So there could be something else going on. Maybe people with lots of kids are less likely to value education. In that case, you'd expect to see the opposite pattern in the oldest generations. And we do. That brings us to another warning from Charles Darwin. He said, "If it could be shown that some conspicuous advantage of a highly beneficial kind is gained by either parent having fewer offspring, the tendency to have fewer offspring would probably become widely diffused through natural selection." What he's saying is that if it pays to have fewer kids, then smart people will evolve to have fewer kids. We already know that the smartest people have the fewest kids. So all we need to know is if they have an advantage. Are their kids smarter than everyone else's? That question was actually studied back in 1921. It turns out that the smartest men have the dumbest kids. Take a man with an IQ of 130, above the 99th percentile. His son will score right at the average IQ of 100. What about the dumbest men? The ones below the 10th percentile. Their sons will score above the average. 104. That might be bad news for humanity, but it's great news for the guys. Being stupid is actually beneficial. If you have a super smart dad, you'll get less of his awesome genes. And the same goes for mom. The least smart moms have the smartest kids. I should mention that none of this matters for women. Female offspring inherit almost all of their genes from their mother anyway, so it doesn't matter if she's smart or not. Now, that wasn't always the case. Back until 10,000 years ago, a woman's intelligence didn't really matter. Her husband and his network of male relatives were responsible for hunting and gathering. If they failed, she and the kids would starve. So it made sense for a smart man to find a dumb wife and have tons of kids with her. This way, he could maximize his chances of passing on his good genes. These days, there's no such thing as a bad wife. It's not like you'll starve to death if she can't kill a woolly mammoth. So a smart person can afford to be more picky, and it seems like they're picking smaller families. There's a famous study that shows this quite well. It was done in 1988, so the data set is pretty old. But the results are still shocking. It turns out that men with IQs below 85 have an average of 3.6 kids. Men with IQs above 130 have 2.1 kids. That's a huge difference, especially considering that they're both below the average IQ. So it does pay to have fewer kids. But that raises another question. Does that mean smart people are going extinct? Well, probably not. First of all, intelligence isn't a single trait. It's actually a combination of many different skills, and there's nothing special about IQ. All sorts of smarts can help you succeed. And second, we can change the world around us. In other words, we can solve this problem ourselves. But that requires knowing how the future will play out. And for that, we need to talk about technology. If you're anything like me, you probably think that technology is advancing fast. But compared to the pace of evolution, it's still slower than a snail. Human biology evolves about one feature every 100,000 years. That's because evolution isn't trying to optimize anything. It's just responding to changes in the environment. For example, when sunlight became more intense about 700,000 years ago, humans evolved darker skin. Technology, however, is advancing much faster than that. We're creating new ways to work and live that we haven't even discovered yet. And all that innovation gives us an opportunity to figure out how to prevent the extinction of smart people. After all, we're the ones coming up with these technologies, and there are already signs that we're doing just that. A study from 2021 looked at over 1 million Swedes. What they found was that men with higher IQs were more likely to become fathers. This sounds like the opposite of the normal pattern, but it only happened under one condition. They needed their partner to be on parental leave. Here's what that looks like. Men with IQs below 85 have an average of 1.5 kids if their partner is on parental leave, and 1.2 kids if she's not. For men with IQs above 130, it's 2.2 kids when their partner is on parental leave, and 1.1 when she's not. Basically, having a partner on parental leave allows smart guys to have almost as many kids as stupid guys. Now, that's only true in Sweden. In the United States, parents get 0 mandated days off. Of course, there are exceptions. Companies like Netflix offer 4 months of paid parental leave. But that's not standard yet. And that brings us to the big question. Will AI make a difference? Today, the most valuable employees are often knowledge workers. Their job is to process information. Some of this is routine and could be handled by AI. Other parts require creativity and imagination, and those aren't things that AI can easily replicate. At least for now, the big threat comes from AI taking over jobs that don't require a college degree. Those jobs are dangerous, dirty, or repetitive. But as machines take over, that could change. It's entirely possible that working in a factory will become an intellectual pursuit. If that happens, it won't matter so much whether you have a college degree or not. In that case, our traditional measures of intelligence will become obsolete. Instead, we'll need something that combines analytical skills with emotional intelligence and a broad range of interests. In fact, that's already happening today. A recent study found that the fastest-growing jobs require exactly that. Unfortunately, this means that old-fashioned intelligence might stop being so useful. Here's what I'm getting at. Intelligence isn't everything. The goal of evolution isn't to create the smartest species. It's to create the most fit. That means it favors traits like compassion, resilience, and adaptability. Intelligence helps, but it's not the only factor. All those other traits are important too, and they're becoming even more important as technology advances. As AI takes over more and more of our routine tasks, we'll need to rely on our creativity and empathy to get by. To summarize, here are the main points of the video. 1. We need to stop equating intelligence with success. That narrow view of intelligence leads to stupid choices. 2. Parenthood is a form of work that deserves respect. It's mentally challenging and socially